family, and welcome to Journee Continues Podcast. Today, we have Fred Durhal, the mayoral candidate that is running for mayor of the city of Detroit. Today, we're going to let him just be himself. We're going to have him discuss. We generated some questions in collaboration with the treatment centers, the recovery homes, and also recovery support coaches. And we're going to ask him some tough questions, and he will be transparent. After speaking with him briefly before we aired, seems like a great guy, and he's here to tell you why it is important to vote and why you should vote for him for the next mayor of Detroit. Welcome.
Thank
Fred,
you.
how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good. And I understand that you was in another meeting and you came all the way over here.
Yeah, we left our city council session that we have every Tuesday.
Okay.
Ran a little over today, and then we rushed right over here so we can be on this great show.
Thank you. So let me just say, he showed up. That's what I keep telling y'all. When you tell someone you want to show up, just show up. He still showed up late, but showed up and called and said, I'm running late. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So our first question, what inspired you to run for mayor of Detroit, and how do your personal experiences shape your leadership style?
Yeah, so first I would say one of the things that inspired me to run for mayor of the city of Detroit is just looking at the time we're in. You know, we're in a very pivotal moment, critical moment here in our city's history. We're going to have a new mayor for the first time in over a decade. And Detroit has made some tremendous growth, but we still got a long way to go. And in order to continue that growth, you're going to need experienced leadership. And so for someone like me, who has had, the pleasure and the honor to serve residents in different capacities as a former state representative, two-term state representative, former assistant Democratic leader of the House, left there, worked for the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, helping people find housing across the state, and now on council where I chair budget, vice chair planning, and chair 4 task force, including the gun violence task force. We know we have the experience that it takes to move Detroit forward. And my entire life, I have been around public service. My dad was my predecessor in the Michigan legislature. I've been around some of the greats, the John Conyers, the Coleman Youngs as a young man. And we want to just continue to move the city forward, move its people forward. And so we felt right that it was the time for us to run. I sat down and talked to my wife, who's the boss,
Right.
as they would say. But don't tell her that.
Oh,
She's going to see it airing. But we sat down and had that conversation and really what our vision was. And my main vision is to build a city that is for families.
Thank you. What is your long-term vision for Detroit, and how do you plan to balance equity and community empowerment?
Yeah, so I would say my long-term vision for Detroit is to restore opportunity to the city. At one time, there was a saying that if you can't make it in Detroit, you can't make it anywhere.
That's what I keep hearing.
Yeah, and so people move from Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia here for that opportunity. And somewhere along the line, that opportunity kind of disappeared. We saw high rates of unemployment. We saw our city go through the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. We saw crime rates rise, and now we're starting to stabilize. But my vision for Detroit is to create one that is safer, dropping crime numbers down. 1 homicide, 1 shooting is one too many here. A place where some people actually feel safe, going to the gas station or letting your children run outside and play, or when you park your car in the driveway, you don't have to worry about if it's going to be there in the morning when you wake up. But creating a city that is equitable, that people can afford to live in, pay their property taxes and not risk foreclosure, but also just build a world-class city. We need business here, we need industry here, because that helps us put more money back into the neighborhoods. It helps us fund programs that are vital, that are needed for folks to be able to survive. And one of the things that's interesting about us is that we have a great ability to bring folks together. We're well respected in the business community as well as in the community as a whole. And so my vision is to bring everyone together so there are no narratives of two Detroit, but only one Detroit, united and not divided.
How will you remain accountable to the communities if you are elected?
So, I always say that the number one level of accountability for an elected official are elections, right? What I would say is, folks have the choice of not having you there when the ballot comes through, but you have to take it a step further while you're serving. And I'm big on accountability and I'm big on transparency. When we talk about accountability, I always go back to a story of my first term in office when I was in the state legislature. I had a lady come to me and says, we want to hold you accountable. And at the time I thought, I was like, wow, does she really know what that means and how to hold me accountable? So one of the things that we started was a political education course.
Oh, wow.
And now we have carried that on through me being a state rep, but now on council, where we host monthly policy sessions to teach folks about government. But I'll be held accountable because I'm accessible. Anyone that knows me, I give out my cell phone number to my entire district. I don't plan to change that number. It'll become a little bit difficult or more difficult to answer all those calls as mayor. But we also are going to look to, engage with the community twice a week, kind of like a fireside chat to let them know what's happening at City Hall, let them know, what are some of the initiatives that we're pushing, and also take their input. I think it is understated sometimes that our residents' voice plays a tremendous role, or should play a tremendous role, on the policy decisions that we make. And so we'll make sure we include them, and provide them with that level of transparency, and also just do things in an ethical manner that is beneficial to the residents of the city.
Thank you. Next question: how will you work with nonprofits, recovery homes, and peer support programs to expand access to transitional housing and recovery services?
Yeah, so I think we want a greater reach. I had a conversation the other day about homelessness solutions. We had a conversation about substance abuse and recovery efforts. And I think we can play a deeper role in our level of communication from the city government. We can play a deeper role trying to work and connect those folks to the services that our city provides, and knock down some of those barriers that may exist to employment, knock down some of those barriers that may exist for the ability for folks to pay their utilities or pay their property taxes. And we will be very steadfast on connecting folks to the resources. Often what we see sometimes, regarding treatment or homelessness solutions, is that we have a lot of folks that create temporary fixes. I want to have the ability to create a path for folks to recovery. And, as I've spoken to a lot of folks who have come through recovery, that path is important, and there's steps that they have to go through to get to the destination that they're trying to reach. And we want to have the ability to walk alongside them through that path and make sure that it is as barrier-free as possible. So we will have monthly meetings with all of our nonprofits regarding, substance abuse or recovery efforts to ensure that we are providing everything we can from the city, and that we're giving them the support that they need. We've got to act strongly as a partner to make sure that those programs are successful.
Thank you. Do you support integrating harm reduction strategies into public health policies? Why or why not?
So, when we look at harm reduction strategies, I think they're important. We want to make sure that we are really focused on our most vulnerable population, and again, providing them the resources that they need. I will say harm reduction should come from the experts, and a lot of our experts are our nonprofits. You know, the city should not be in the business of trying to provide services that we're not experts at, but we should provide funding and partner with those that are. And so I'd be in favor of that, you know, but with the communication and collaboration of the leadership of a lot of our nonprofits who have developed strategic plans to do that, I'm very open to that and very supportive of it.
What are your plans to address the affordable housing crisis, especially, and you already pretty much addressed this, for vulnerable populations such as single mothers, seniors, and people in recovery? You did address that, so I apologize for reading it.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, you
It's
definitely
okay.
addressed it, that question.
But I can touch on it a little bit more.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
About affordable housing. So, you know, that's one of the biggest crises that we face.
Okay.
I've been very, 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 very intentional about pushing policy forward that promotes more affordable housing here in the city of Detroit. I created a program called, and sponsored an ordinance called the Pilot Fast Track Ordinance, which is set now to create over 1,400 new affordable housing units per year here in the city of Detroit, while expanding the eligibility based off of folks' income. And then we lock those developers into 15 years of affordability, 15 years of compliance, and then also give them the ability to sign back up for another 15 years of affordability and 15 years of compliance. And that way we don't see a lot of rents rise, we don't see displacement, and we see more opportunity for folks to be able to live somewhere that they can afford to live. But as far as connecting those resources to folks who are in recovery, or folks who are returning citizens, I chair the Returning Citizens Task Force as well. We want to come in and have open arms to them. I think to a sense of where our government has failed a little bit is when we talk about housing for folks who are in recovery and our returning citizens. You know, oftentimes when folks are coming out of recovery or they're coming out of our criminal justice system, they don't have a lot of contact with family because they have support services, right? And they face homelessness, or they face, you know, a situation where they feel they have nowhere to turn. And we don't want to promote recidivism. We don't, you know, we don't want to have a relapse happen with a lot of our folks who are in recovery. And we've got to push those efforts forward to really, you know, find a way to be a brace for them, or give them that access. And housing is one of those issues that is least talked about. We talk about jobs a lot, but we've got to talk about housing, and we've also got to talk about how we eliminate housing discrimination for folks who are coming out of recovery or folks who are returning citizens.
I'm just sitting here thinking, digesting what you said. I won't digest too long, but that's some great information, especially when you said in regards to the discrimination when it comes to housing.
Yeah.
Because if you have a criminal background,
That's right.
no one don't want to rent to you.
That's right.
And I'm gonna go ahead and put myself on the line. Here we go, family. So when I try to go for a place, and I have a background, and I had to write. Thank God I had a good credit score. That's what got me through.
Yeah.
I had to write why I had that charge. But a lot of people like myself who have a background can't get housing.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It's difficult to get housing. So when as you was touching on it, I just remember the time when and thank God it was only one place that I went to rent from, and I was able to get through because I was transparent. I was honest. Made a mistake, and I've been held accountable. I served my time. Now I need a place to stay.
Yeah.
So thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in second chances. You know, we are all one mistake away from putting ourselves in a situation that becomes more difficult for us to do some of the things that everyone else does. You know, I have been a champion for criminal justice reform on a state level. I introduced the Ban the Box bill that removes the question, have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor from a job application? I did that when I was in the state legislature. It did not pass. At the time we were in a Republican-controlled legislature. But something interesting happened out of that. Governor Snyder, because we were pushing this bill, made that the state's hiring practice. So now if you're applying for a job at the state level that has nothing to do with childcare or, working with a vulnerable population, you are not asked, have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor on a job application? But we've got to take further steps, and we've got to, look at that here in the city of Detroit. That is our hiring practice now as well. But we got to focus on housing discrimination, because here's the thing: we don't want to create or add to the revolving door. So we've got to have folks not discriminated upon when they're just trying to find a roof over their head so they can live.
And in order for them to be productive citizens, they have to have somewhere to lay their heads. That's the hierarchy, right? It starts with safety. That's our safety. Yeah. We need a place to lay our heads. Then we can get a job. If we don't have no place to go, how can you focus on keeping a job, let alone go get a job?
That's right. Food, clothing, and shelter.
Whew.
3 of the most important things you need.
So our next question: would you support partnerships that allow city-owned or donated properties to be used by nonprofits? If so, how?
Yeah, sure. I think as we look at some properties that are on our inventories, whether that's through the Detroit Building Authority or the Detroit Land Bank Authority, I do see there being an opportunity to have some of our strong nonprofits be housed there, and provide opportunity for them to either purchase the property at a discounted rate or, depending on the service, be able to provide that property to them so they can help with the services that they provide for the residents. So I'm very open to that, and to those discussions, and kind of creating that community feel. We've got to get back to how we embrace each other in a community type of feel. And I think, when we look and we talk about repopulating our neighborhoods, right? Yes, we want families to move in those homes, and some of those neighborhoods don't have contiguous structures or contiguous homes there. There's an opportunity to repopulate and rebuild those neighborhoods by providing services and access to those properties for folks to get moved in and create kind of a village. And so I'm open to that.
Okay. How do you envision improving public safety in a way that also builds trust between law enforcement and Detroit communities?
Yeah, so as chair of the Gun Violence Task Force, I've been very focused on community violence intervention, otherwise known as CVI. And what this is we created a $10 million program called the Shot Stoppers Program, where we send folks who may have been involved with our criminal justice system, or may have been gang leaders, or may have been shooters at one time, and we send them back into the community to mentor young men and women to get them to put their guns down. And so this is not traditional investment in law enforcement, but it's investment in a community program that is designed to help increase public safety. And on the other end, yes, we want to provide resources for our officers and our police department, because we need a strong department as well to keep folks safe. And I think what we've been really good at over the past few years is bridging that gap. And so when you see the relationship now that has come between law enforcement and community violence intervention and community policing, those relationships have started to improve significantly. We've got to stay on that path with investment, though. It is important to note that you will not arrest your way out of crime. We have to focus on addressing the social determinants that lead to violence and that lead to crime, and whether that's substance abuse or whether that's mental health or whether that's conflict resolution. We've got to focus on those. And so what I am going to do as mayor, one of my first acts is going to be able to create an Office of Violence Prevention that will allow us to deal with those social determinants that lead to crime and lead to violence, and kind of a one-stop shop idea where folks can come here and have access to all the resources they need and help them live productive lives.
Thank you. Next question: what mental health initiatives would you prioritize to reduce violence and substance abuse in high-risk neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think we often think that if folks have mental health issues that they're going to come to us, or substance abuse issues, they're going to come to us. And what is not stated often is that in our communities, particularly Black communities, urban communities, whatever you want to call it, there's a stigma attached when you are going to get assistance for mental health as well as substance abuse. And a lot of those folks fall by the wayside because they're either embarrassed or they don't know where to start or where to go, or they may feel like they have shamed their family. So we've got to find a better way of going and reaching them. And one of the things that I would propose from our standpoint is taking our health department, working with great programs like DWIN on the county level that deals with mental health. Chief White, who was our police chief, is now over DWIN, and going directly into those communities and providing outreach, and being very involved in block clubs and community associations and organizations, but also making it a citywide campaign of marketing and saying, hey, it's okay. If you're facing these issues, we want to help. And being very vocal about it to let folks that know that they're not alone. And so we put mental health professionals or substance abuse professionals into these neighborhoods, getting folks directly connected to the services that they can provide. I think that's the way we want to go about it. You've got to come to folks sometimes. We just can't think that they're going to come to us. But we also got to let them know, and you mentioned this earlier, that they can trust us, right? Trust is a huge component of any relationship. And they have to know that we're going to be there for them every step of the way. We're not going to treat them as criminals. We're not going to look down on them because whatever issue that they have, but we're there to provide the resources that they need, and then make it a whole, develop an ecosystem that exists, so we're not just spot treating, right? That we're really creating that type of ecosystem that will be able to gather everybody.
You're absolutely right when you say trust. Trust is a big factor in the recovery community, and especially, particularly, I would say, a person don't remember what you did for them, but they sure remember how you treated them at the end of the day.
That's
So
right.
it's about how you treat a person, so you can gain your respect. So thank you for touching on that. How will you ensure that people impacted by trauma and addiction are treated with dignity and compassion by city institutions?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we will focus on making sure that they're treated with dignity and respect, and you kind of asked about this earlier with my leadership style.
Yeah.
The buck stops here, right? I demand accountability for the folks who will work with me and work for me. Yes, it is a team, but we want to ensure that everybody has the opportunity, treated with respect and dignity. And it's all about setting the tone, right? And when you set that tone, you say, listen, we are not going to allow discrimination. We are not going to allow folks to make people feel less than just because they need to receive services from us. So I'll be very vocal on that and ensure that we are developing a talented team that, shares the vision that I have. I tell folks this, the reason I am the way that I am, my dad had a saying when we were growing up that always sticks with me. And he said, son, never forget that the only person that you're better than is the person that you used to be. So, in that framing, right? I know I'm not better than anybody. I just try to be better myself each and every day. And I live my life accordingly. And so I don't look down on folks. Anybody who is connected to me, I won't allow them to do that either. But we will foster an environment where folks feel safe to come to us, right? And say that we are really sincere, we're genuine, we're authentic about getting them the help that they need. And we're going to work with all our partners, whether that's Share House or whoever the case may be. We are going to be focused on working with them and increasing the services to residents, because just to be frank and honest with you, our future will look very dim if we don't start, pushing a little bit harder to get these services to folks.
I agree. What is your strategy for engaging and supporting Detroit's youth, especially those at risk of substance use or justice involvement?
Yeah, so, you know, my grandma had this old saying, says, keep both hands busy to stay out of trouble, right?
Okay.
And then she, you know, I quote my grandmother a lot. You know?
I think I do that. No,
Yeah,
but that's great that you can retain that information, you know, so it means something and you are using it, right?
Yes.
Oh man, but when you said that, I'm just like, I think I do that now.
Yeah, keep both hands busy to stay out of trouble. And she said, an idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Yes.
So we got to keep our youth busy. We got to keep them engaged. We've got to ensure that they have after-school programs. They have extracurricular activities. You know, quote my grandmother again. You know, she says it's easier to pay for folks on the front end than it is on the back end. So when we look at the population, particularly now, and it's concerning, a tremendous amount of our population and our youth are getting involved in crime or getting involved in violence. You know, I firmly believe is because we don't give them enough to do. We don't provide enough access to programs that will keep them going. You know, when I came up, you know, I graduated from the high school of Performing Arts DSA.
Okay.
And I played an instrument. You know, when I was
instrument?
I play everything but the bassoon and oboe, but my main instruments are trombone and the euphonium, which is the baritone.
Okay.
But there were bands everywhere. Every school had a band, right? You see it in all of the parades, and now there's only about really 4 or 5 schools in DPSCD that really have a band, right? Two things happened with that. One, you took away the ability for young folks to have access to the arts and culture, and which helped develop discipline. And then the second thing, you took away a big piece or opportunity for them to get scholarships to college. We've got to bring back and promote the arts and push that. But, you know, we've also got, you know, to have after-school programs. You know, we used to have Youthville. We used to have so many other outlets for our young folks. And we've got to get serious about that, really get deep into reactivating our recreation centers where they're not just brick and mortars, but inside of those recreation centers are programs that are assisting the youth. And that's why I've been very focused on helping get funding to some of those programs like the Boys and Girls Club. You know, both locations are in my district. And just
What's your district?
So my district, District 7,
And
is...
that is Congressional District what?
No, that's Council District 7 and Congressional District 12.
12, you're 12 district.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've got a piece of the 13th as well,
Okay.
just a sliver of the 13th. But, you know, in my district, you know, both Boys and Girls Clubs are there, and they provide services to our youth. They're teaching them, you know, about fashion design, but they're teaching them about business. They're teaching them about being entrepreneurs. You know, all of these great things that keep them busy, that keep them excited, and then still provide recreation. We need that in our city-owned rec centers to make sure that we're operating and pushing forward programs that provide vital resources and access to our youth. And so I will be very focused on reactivating those centers, but also focus on something that nobody's talking about. You hear me quote my grandmother a lot. That connection between those who came before us and those who are coming after us, between our seniors and our youth, we gotta bridge that gap. You know, we can't create a situation where they're fearful of one another. You know, there's a saying that a child will burn down the village to feel the warmth of his people. If we're not wrapping our arms around our young folks, who will? And that's kind of what you see there. Some of the older folks fear some of the younger folks, and the young folks feel that old folks don't understand. How do we bridge that gap? And we're going to plan to get them all in the recreation centers and develop programming that connects them. But I'll say we're also going to do, you know, something else relative to our youth. We're going to get them on a career path early. I've been very pointed in saying in this election that I want to create a path that leads to colleges and careers and not cages and caskets. And the way that we do that is start at an earlier age and start to spark the interest of our young folks of where they individualized learning plans for each child to track where they are and see how we can better provide the resources to get to the destination that they want to go. And by the time they're in 12th grade, they should know if they're going to be an entrepreneur, or if they're going to be working in our skilled trades, or if they're going to college. And if they want to go to college, and by the way, we're going to make sure that every kid that wants to go to college will have the ability to go to college. You know, those are the things that we're going to promote to create a healthy path for productivity for the youth.
Thank you. I just want to touch on, the job corps, right?
Yeah.
What would be, from what I've heard from the news and just individuals speaking of it, that they don't have any more funding and a lot of them have been displaced.
Yeah.
You have teenagers who have fled an environment that they knew wasn't good for them. I heard one guy say that if I stayed out here, I'm gonna get killed or I'll be selling drugs.
Yeah.
Not to catch you off guard,
No.
what are we gonna do? How? What type of program, being as though the federal government has slashed that funding? How can your administration make sure these children who have a safe place, who wants to go to school, who wants to learn a trade, who wants to better their lives, what do we do? I don't know how to put it, but what are you going to do if you are elected mayor? How are you going to help these children?
So, we will try to connect as many folks as we can to the programs that exist, like Growth, Nutrition, and Talent, and then some other programs that we have even on the state level. But what I will say first and foremost, the federal government cutting Job Corps, cutting AmeriCorps, strong programs like that connect our youth to opportunity is really unconscionable. As mayor, I am going to be very focused on going to the federal government, going to DC and saying, hey, these are programs that are instrumental in the growth of our young folks and our city as a whole. But this is why experience is going to count on this election. I'm the only person running right now that can say they served on the state level and the city level and delivered. I am going to be in Lansing and trying to get funding to come down here and soften that blow from what we're not getting from the federal government to ensure great programs like Job Corps can stay afloat as best that we can. I've been successful in the past in the legislature every time DAPSEP flipped the script, which is a program that is designed to derail the pipeline to prison for our youth. Every time that funding was getting cut, I'm the guy that helped save it. And so I'm going to be utilizing those skills that I have as a legislator and those relationships that I have to be able to deliver funding even from the state level. But finally, what I would say here at the city level, I am going to go talk to all of our private partners, because one of the things that's been instrumental in helping rebuild the city of Detroit is public-private partnerships. And so we're going to talk to them and say, hey, listen, this is a vulnerable population. These are at-risk youth. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that we keep them on a great path. So I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your investment to ensure that these young folks, who are our future, by the way, who will be hopefully running this city one day when Mr. Durhal is old and great, right? We're going to need your help to get them over that hump. And then hopefully, because we've got about 3 years of this administration, hopefully they wise up, and if they don't, hopefully there's a change where we can have some of those programs, vital programs, restored and that funding restored.
Thank you. So, it's not even a question. I want you to speak to the audience. So, as a precinct delegate, I am responsible to be a bridge between the constituents and the elected officials and the candidates that's running for office. So the reason why I believe that this was important for Fred to be here, Fred Councilman, that's what I call him, Fred Councilman, to be here, so he can share with you his vision for Detroit. a lot of us, and I'm gonna say myself, before I became a precinct delegate, we didn't even know who we were voting for. We would go into the booth. I'm gonna say for myself, I remember going into the booth and like, who is this? And because I liked the name, and I can be honest, because I liked the name or the name sound like one of my cousins, I chose that name without understanding the history and what they have done for the city. So with that being said, Councilman Fred, can you explain to the audience why it's important to vote? Not even vote for, you can say vote for me, but it don't even have nothing to do with you. It's about democracy at this point. Because I know a lot of people don't want to vote because they think they don't have a voice.
Correct.
And I'm speaking particularly about the recovery community. They feel as though, oh, I don't have a voice, so my vote don't matter. I'm not going to go vote. That's unacceptable. So I want you to explain to the audience as a whole. I'm particularly speaking to the recovery community, but he's speaking collectively for everyone, unity, right? Why it is important to cast a vote, and why it's going to be important to make a conscious decision on August 5th on who the next mayor will be.
Yeah, so what I would say is, and talking directly to the audience, it doesn't matter who you vote for, but I do want you to vote for me on August the 5th. It is important to have your voice heard. You know, there's a saying that you can't complain about what's going on if you don't open your mouth. And the way that you open your mouth is through your vote. Your vote is your voice. And as we look at how this city is progressing and will progress over the next decade or so, and even just the next 4 years, you have to be a part of that. You have to get out there and express what you want to see in a leader. You have to get out there and express, you know, what your vision is and how it aligns with folks who come in front of you and tell you what their vision is. And so it is very important. You know, we can talk about, you know, the history of voting particularly and how so many folks died for the right to vote, and we say that at every election. But I tell folks that most decisions that are made that really affect your lives are on the local level. So when we talk about if you have substance abuse issues, or you're in recovery right now and you come through recovery, it's important to remember that a lot of those programs were funded through the government. So you want to make sure that the folks that you are selecting support programs like that give folks a second chance, that help provide housing for folks, that stop discrimination against folks. You want to make sure that you have your voice heard and get your boots on the ground and get your soul to the polls. Now, what I would say about this election coming up for mayor, it is very important. Again, this is the first time we will have a seat open in over 10 years here in the city of Detroit. And Detroit has come so far. You see downtown is growing, but we still need help in our commercial corridors that are adjacent to our neighborhoods. We still have to build walkable neighborhoods where you have access to fresh groceries, access to a pharmacy, access to a doctor's office, access to retail. And those are the types of things that will help move this city forward. We still need help with property taxes. Our property taxes are too high here in the city of Detroit. And so you're going to need someone who can help deliver that type of relief from Lansing. But we still have issues with public safety, and you hear we got to continue to make our streets safer. You are going to need someone who has a proven track record of doing that and will continue to do that. So what I would say is this is one of the most important elections that is coming up on August the 5th, because it will define what the city of Detroit will look like for the next 20 years. So please get out and vote. Have your voice heard. You know, engage with candidates. Go to forums. Go to debates. Look up folks and do your research. Oftentimes we get caught into what we think is popular or who is popular, but I will tell you the thing that matters the most is experience. Experience is the key to move our city forward. And so please get out on August 5th and go vote.
All right, thank you so much, for encouraging our audience to get out and vote and explaining to them why it is important to vote. So, Fred, you did a great job.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions for you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop his information in the link. I'm going to drop his information in the comment section. And if you want to learn more about him, you'll have that information. Until then, family, stay safe, stay cool, and please vote. Deuces.